Hundreds of Starbucks throughout the United States are being closed, primarily in big blue progressive cities. Now, corporate is telling us that they're being closed due to economic realities. They're not making enough money and safety issues. Safety issues. Yeah. Okay. The other one that they didn't throw out there, of course not, is that a bunch of these stores have been unionized. What do we got going on? Let's get into it. Let's talk about Starbucks closures. Here we go. See what the Starbucks closures look like in California. Here's a story.
Shake-up for coffee giant Starbucks, the iconic chain announcing the closure of 400 of its shops nationwide, including several here in the Bay Area. Many workers say they were blindsided by the announcement and the shuttering of these stores, sending a ripple effect through still fragile local economies. KTV's John Krinjak spoke to some regular customers.
At the Starbucks on Solano Avenue in Berkeley,
Johnson.
From regular customers who walked up Friday to see this sign on the door saying that this location would be closed Saturday.
This is a residential area, and it seems like a lot of people stop and visit and meet up with their friends and have coffee.
Several Starbucks across the Bay.
So if a lot of people go there, why is it closing down? It's a nice, normal area. It doesn't have safety issues. It's too expensive. Doesn't meet their model. Yeah. Might be unionized. Who knows, right? Those are your variables. And Starbucks is $1 billion restructuring. This is how you do it. You close the ones that don't make sense. And if you've got a whole bunch of safety issues like weirdos running around with swords coming in and, doing crank in your bathrooms, then you're going to kind of close some of those stores down, aren't you? Yep. All right.
Area displaying the same signs, including some in San Francisco, Oakland, and this one in Danville.
I am shocked. I had heard nothing about that. I'm just really sad.
And I'm gonna show you photos of the Starbucks I went to that one day I was there and it was open. The next day, boom, literally 2 days ago, closed. Just done, gone. Starbucks did this on purpose because when they give that big long lead time, everybody, this is my favorite Starbucks. And they protest and whine and bitch. And so corporate has decided, well, we're going to make the announcement on Thursday. And by Saturday night, closed. Boom, done.
Because this is a great place to hang out. It really is the center of town.
Starbucks CEO Brian Niccol saying in a statement, during the review, we identified coffee houses where we're unable to create the physical environment our customers and partners expect.
Oh, that is so great. Oh, that is some epic doublespeak, isn't it? We're unable to create... Sorry, whacked my microphone. We're unable to create the physical environment our customers and our partners expect. It's violent. You could get killed there. That's not the environment that they want. You could get stabbed with a sword. You could have to step over feces. You could have to deal with who knows what in the restroom. You don't know. Windows might get broken out. Not uncommon. Weirdos just running around, coming into the store, doing weird stuff. Totally normal. Completely normal in big blue cities. Not to say that they didn't close down a bunch of stores in Republican cities too. They have. But a lot of those where they're like drive-through or carry-out only, where they don't have the environment that they want, meaning people coming in and having that Starbucks experience. They're getting rid of those smaller places that literally only either have drive-through or pickup.
Or where we don't see a path to financial performance, and these locations will be closed.
I just heard this today, and I'm super disappointed. Been coming here for over 10 years. It's basically our daily routine.
The Bay Area shops represent a small fraction of the roughly 400 Starbucks that are closing nationwide.
It's a big chain, so I guess the big chain is not doing as well with many of the small stores.
Workers telling us off camera that they were given no notice that they'd be losing their jobs. Starbucks says it will work to accommodate transfers for those employees. The company is also eliminating 900 non-retail corporate jobs. The decision is part of a $1 billion restructuring plan. Starbucks also laid off 1,100 workers back in March. Some customers say even before this announcement, they had already moved on.
We don't really go to Starbucks. I go to Pete's.
Now, the union that represents some Starbucks workers blasting this move and criticize the leadership of the CEO. Meanwhile, Starbucks says it will update its app by Sunday to reflect the new closed stores. In Berkeley, I'm John Frinjak, KTV Fox 2 News.
So that was a Berkeley store. Okay. All right. So I went to a Starbucks literally the announcement came on Thursday, right? September 26th, I think it was, something like that. 25th, 26th. And literally, I was there on a Saturday. I was sitting right here at a table right here on Saturday. And then by Sunday, this is what it looked like. Just garbage and crap, and all the normal stuff was gone. Everything of value was, with the exception of the built-in coffee makers, was pretty much just not there. And they had a sign that basically said, "We're so sorry about having to close this store," and they put the same exact sign up. I'm not going to read this for you because you've probably seen it elsewhere, but it's just basically Starbucks saying, "Hey, gonna have to close this bad boy up." So I'm going to go through the Starbucks that I know of, kind of tell you what I'm thinking. Starbucks is laying off around 900 employees, closing 28 stores in Washington. So I'm going to focus on Washington because I know those locations, including 9 in Seattle. All right, 2 stores in Queen Anne. Those are both not in great areas. One's Lower Queen Anne. Not ideal location. Safety issues, of course. Seattle Reserve Roastery. First roastery the company created, located on Capitol Hill. Okay. And keep in mind, all of these suffer from the minimum hourly wage of, what is it, $26, something like that in Seattle. So if you have a bunch of stores that you're going to close, if you need to close XYZ number of stores, any of the ones that are unionized, because we all know Starbucks doesn't like unions because, they don't. And then you've got minimum wage issues. The economics don't work. And that is the store that I went to. And we'll get to it. So Capitol Hill, boom, closed because that's on Pike Street. It's safety issues. Starbucks Reserve Store in Seattle, Sodo. Again, tougher area. It's down by the 2 big domes, professional sports. In Aurora, Starbucks at 130th and Aurora Avenue North. Aurora Avenue North is Highway 99, which is just a plethora of prostitutes and pimps doing their thing. Human trafficking, sex trafficking. And yeah, every now and then you got to get a Starbucks, right? To just jolt your system and get that sex trafficking really moving on. That is what Aurora Avenue North is all about. I was on Aurora Avenue North last Thursday. I'm visiting some friends who just had a baby, and I wanted to see the baby. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Hey, it's a baby. And so I stopped at the AM PM on the corner of Northeast Northgate Way and Highway 99. Dystopian nightmare. I mean, from the minute you walk in, there's a sign saying, "Hey, you got to be a paying customer. If you're not, we're calling the cops." There was an older prostitute that had lost all of her teeth from meth. She was in a tiny pair of hot pants that were just, a bunch of guys milling around the parking lot. Like, I didn't know if I should park. And this is a couple of blocks from my friends' houses, right? I mean, it's just, like, oh, okay, all right, okay. And then a bunch of people at the bus stop that are they're doing drugs, they're smoking the fatty, just open out in the open. That is Aurora Avenue North. So the Aurora Starbucks, not a shocker. Then we come to the Starbucks that I go to. If I go to a Starbucks in Seattle, this is it. Eastlake Avenue. And it's in a residential area, like we heard about the San Francisco Starbucks, even though that was Berkeley. Eastlake Avenue. There's no major break-ins there. There's no weirdos running around. There's no homeless, no shenanigans. So what you're left with is that it's a Starbucks that, due to the minimum wage and due to economics, they're closing it down because by all other standards, that's an okay Starbucks. And I do not drink coffee, so I am not a Starbucks fan. What I am a fan of is their breakfast sandwiches. I think they're pretty good. So I'll get a breakfast sandwich and I'll get a really wildly overpriced cup of hot tea. Yeah, Emperor's, but not at this one anymore. And that's where the picture I showed you from. And then we got Starbucks at 4th Avenue South. Yeah, that's a terrible address, so no go. Here, Bellevue. Bellevue had one. Now, this is where I believe their news release, which is they're getting rid of the very small stores. And this is basically a drive-through only. The Starbucks at 15600 Northeast 8th Street is a drive-through that I go through often to get a breakfast sandwich. And my girlfriend likes to get a coffee. For the life of me, I can't remember what her order is, but it's one of those half, don't even know. But they're closing this one down because it's drive-through only. They don't make enough money. Can't keep it open. Doesn't make sense. And then the rest of them are random. I didn't research them. You can get another one here, Highway 99 in Edmonds. Again, not ideal. And you've got some smaller stores, Kirkland, that because of their economics, Linwood, yep. Highway 99, again, not a great road, no matter what city it's in. So you've got some closures there, and you got one in Redmond, its location at 161st Avenue Northeast. It's a small scale store. That's what they're doing. They're closing down stuff that doesn't make any sense. Now, if you want to question the whole union thing, you want to question the minimum hourly wage in Seattle, all you got to do is kind of look at this ridiculousness. The Starbucks Reserve Roastery, that's in Pike Place, or not Pike Place, it's on Pike Street in Capitol Hill. That was defaced following the abrupt closure. They're so upset their Starbucks got closed down that they went ahead and graffitied it. Yeah. So, you know what? Nothing confirms a closure like having the store defaced right after that happened. Only in Seattle, right? Only in Seattle. There was a handful in Portland, too. Starbucks Reserve Roastery in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood was defaced after it shuttered its doors following a nationwide series of state closures and layoffs, store closures and layoffs. According to a photo posted on the Seattle Reddit page, the word cowardly was plastered in capital letters across the back black panels that cover the windows of the now closed establishment. Cowardly. Cowardly. What is cowardly about making adjustments to your business plan, to your business model? What is cowardly about that? You just want what you want. You're a libtard. You're a progressive. You're an Antifa, whatever. You're on the left and you're like, it's cowardly. Well, why don't you run a business in a deficit for decades and then see how that goes? Well, Starbucks has all kinds of corporate profits. Well, the way that they typically have corporate profits is they jettison stuff like this, where numbskulls write cowardly on the outside. Yeah, that's a thing. Now, we don't really need that store anymore. Closed. Even if it's making some money. It's like Whole Foods in San Francisco. They were making money, but you had too many weirdos in the bathrooms doing weird stuff, doing drugs, doing each other, who knows what. Too much poop, too much hypodermic needles back in the day. And Whole Foods just said, no, we can't take it. We're out of here. It's a safety issue. Just like In-N-Out Burger in Oakland. They were making money. It was positive cash flow. But when you had bullets zinging into the actual store itself, the restaurant itself, that's when the owner said, you know what? We're going to probably close down our Oakland location. And we're moving all corporate to Tennessee because people can actually afford to buy a home there. Weird, right? Starbucks previously announced it's laying off 900. We're unable to create the physical environment our customers and partners expect, or where we don't see a path to financial performance. In other words, it's violent, or there's no money in this store. So we're closing it down. And so when they make that statement, we don't see a path, a way to get to profitability, closed. And I love the fact that they announced on a Thursday and did it by Saturday. I mean, there is nothing like ripping that Band-Aid off by just not giving any of those protesters the ability to get out there with their stupid signs and keep our Starbucks open. It's like when people in their community want to rally around their grocery store that corporate has bitched about, hey, you guys shoplift us to death. We're not going to be able to keep this open if you guys keep shoplifting in our store. And then when corporate gives kind of that final, well, it's with deep thought and consideration, and it breaks our hearts to close this store because we know we're creating more of a food desert in your community. But you left us no other choice. And then everybody, oh, we're going to talk with the city council. We're going to protest you, corporate, closing down our grocery store that we caused to close down by shoplifting it to death. You know what I mean? Is any of that? I get it. People want to have their stores stay open, but there's a point at which it doesn't make any sense. And it could be something as simple as it's a union store. Screw those guys. Nobody wants to say that part out loud, but I don't have any ownership of Starbucks. I don't really care. I don't even like coffee, so I don't care. So if you lose your Starbucks, that sucks because I get it. Breakfast sandwiches are good. Yeah. All right. Yeah. They're not great, but they're okay. Chicago, New York, Shanghai, Tokyo, and Milano are the only other cities in the world that have a Starbucks Reserve roastery. Well, Seattle did, but not anymore. Closed. Gone. So if you're wondering, it's like 400 stores. They've got 18,300 stores in North America, and they're down 124 from last year. They're going to close down a few hundred, 400, whatever it might be. But remember, they're still opening stores. So Starbucks is going to be fine. But the progressives in these big cities, Democrats in these big cities, they're going to whine and, why isn't it staying open? Well, because you did the union thing, or you did the minimum wage, or it's just in an area where Starbucks doesn't want to take the risk of keeping that store open when they can open a store in another area or another state or another city or another county that actually respects law and order. That's a weird concept, isn't it? Because so many of these stores, especially the ones in Seattle, they're in tough areas. I mean, you've got our mayor running around saying everything's great here. It's not. Seattle has major issues. Within the last 2 weeks, I have literally witnessed people in downtown Seattle doing the open air, drug buying and selling, smoking confetti right on the street. I've seen that up in Aurora last Friday. I mean, this is not new stuff. None of this is new. None of this is like, oh, shocker, we're closing down some stores. But it's kind of like Trump sending in more troops to Portland because Antifa is just going ham on that ICE facility there in South Portland, right? They're just going ham. So what else are you going to do? Yeah, you're going to send some Trump troops in, and all of political leadership, even leadership here in Seattle, our mayor is like, we stand in solidarity with Portland. Well, if Portland allowed its police force to take care of these numbnuts, Antifa, Rose City Antifa, if Portland's political leadership allowed their own police force to do what they are supposed to be doing, which is enforce the law, instead, Portland's leadership says, oh no, our city police officers are not going to get involved with the federal ICE detention center. No Portland police there. So the feds are left on their own. And that is what Trump is sending in the troops for, which I 100% agree. You're looking at 100 nights of protesting at that ridiculous ICE facility in Portland. And if these wildly violent, they had a guillotine. They had a guillotine out there. They're mimicking beheading ICE agents. If that's not violent, I don't know what it is. But you've literally got leadership in Portland and Seattle saying, it's an overreaction. Well, then why don't you let your police force actually enforce the law. And then there wouldn't be any of these protesters to get worked up about, to need to send the feds in on. But when you've defaced and you've graffitied and you've done all kinds of noise ordinance violations and you bring out a guillotine and you're basically just pretty violent, because that is what Antifa is, then, at some point in time, you're going to face some consequences. And I know that's so hard for folks on the left to kind of process. There's consequences for actions. And this is what's happening. It's been 100 days of ridiculous Antifa just going ham on the ICE facility in Portland. Here's your reckoning. You're going to send a couple of dozen agents in and they're going to take care of you, because Antifa is basically all bark, no bite. You know what I mean? You send a few troops after them and they just, because when they know they have the upper hand with just, when they know that local officials have said, don't go after the protesters because of freedom of speech, they know that they've kind of got the ability to do whatever the F they want. You have these new troops coming in. The message there is, hey, we're not going to allow you to screw around with the ICE facility anymore. Enough is enough. Stop your nonsense, ridiculous people. Starbucks closed hundreds of stores, lay off 900 workers. So here's another little tidbit from an AP story. Starbucks said it expects to spend $1 billion on the restructuring. That's what we're doing with closings here, including $160 million on employee separation benefits and $850 million related to the physical store closing and the cost of exiting leases. Wah, wah, wah. Just closing them down. Closed. Why? Starbucks is closing hundreds of stores. We've beaten that to death, right? Just absolutely beaten it to death. Is Starbucks closing? Store closing? Here's a list for Washington. And you might say, well, it is. I mean, they've closed them in these big blue cities. The predominance of Starbucks are in big urban centers because you got more people walking around. In a rural community or a suburban community, you can't have 14 Starbucks concentrated in 1 block mile, right? Don't have enough customers. But in the big cities, which oftentimes are blue, progressive shenanigans, that's where you've got the, one Starbucks on every corner. I remember a Starbucks here in Bellevue. There was like 3 Starbucks, 1 on 3 of 4 corners. And you're just left with, why? Traffic flow? Walkability? You can't walk across the street and get a Starbucks? I guess not. So, remember when we used to be just a Starbucks popping up everywhere? Now we're going the opposite direction. We're going a different direction. I think Starbucks has realized, hey, time to reel that bad boy in, because we're in the beginning of we're in the midst of some kind of depression. We just are. We're certainly in some kind of recession, whether you want to, look at the metrics. But that's another thing that Starbucks they're looking at. They're looking at the numbers. They get what's going on. They get that people are pulling spending back. And this is part of that. So if you've got spending on top of safety issues, on top of union, on top of, mandated hourly wages in the high 20s, then you're going to close those stores. Not that hard of a pill to swallow to me. But so many that live in fantasy land, that live in just not reality, can't make that leap of logic, which is, those are the stores you should be shutting down. Pretty simple. But apparently to a lot of folks, it's not. I want my Starbucks open. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.